and welcome to this episode of Spotlight 209, sponsored by Horseshoe Casino Hammond, offering a premier gaming and entertainment experience in Northwest Indiana. Our guest today is coming in live from 5959 Broadway in celebration of this past weekend's 2A football state title, as the Andrean 59ers were able to beat Brownstown Central 7-0 in a dogfight to win the program's fourth state title in school history. Here to talk about it is someone who has been a part of all four state titles in one capacity or another, and is the head coach of the 59ers, Mr. Chris Skinner. Chris?
Hello.
What's up, sir? How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me. This is an honor.
Well, you've had a crazy week, I'm sure. Crazy couple weeks, really, right? The pressure going into the state game, and now the press and everything else. I saw Ben Novak had his presser yesterday, which is really cool. Going to IU. So tell us, A, how does it feel to win your fourth in some capacity, second as a head coach?
Well, I guess the feeling in the immediacy of all of this is, a lot of pride. Obviously, proud of the effort and the way the game played out. For anybody that saw it, I think it was pretty obvious. The physicality, the intensity, like the tense game itself. So to win a game like that is pretty cool. But then also just, in totality of the entire season to finish it that way, all of the months of the off season and the grind of the season itself, it's rewarding in a way that is very difficult to describe, if I'm being honest. So yeah, all of that is great. And, now we get to enjoy some of these things that come along with it. But it never really stops. Like you said, last night, Ben Novak signed, so we had that. And, at some point we got to turn the page to 2026. But I can say, right now in the immediacy of it, it feels pretty good.
There were some big moments in that game. I was able to watch it from home. It felt like you guys couldn't punch that thing in when you wanted to. And then their star middle linebacker left the game with his helmet popped off, and you guys were able to punch it in. Tell us a little bit about the tumult that was going on in that game as a head coach and what was going on in your head.
Yeah, one thing that's great about the Andrean community is just like the support. So I heard from so many people leading up to the game, but after the game, one of the most common messages I received or people I talked to was just like the tension that people had watching it, whether they were there live or watching it on TV. Just, like you said, you're on the 1 yard line, you get stopped 3 plays in a row, you get stuffed on 4th down, and it's like, I can imagine people walking around the living room like, oh my God, what do we, what's happening here? So, but in the moment, I promise you, like, nobody on the sidelines felt that way, right? It was just about, okay, like, what's the next thing we have to do? So as an offense, what's the next thing we have to do to make sure when we get the ball back that we're moving the ball into scoring position? Defensively, what is it that we need to do to make sure that we're continually reading our keys? What curveball might they throw at us next? So there's a couple of things that we went into the game, on defense, making sure that we were always on top of them. One of them was their player number 1, was their most explosive player. So, right, so like, what might they do with him to try to, for themselves, get into scoring position? So I promise that was really kind of all that the focus was. And, it was tense literally until the clock hit 0. Because there was no moment to really breathe or, to get caught up in what had happened previously. It was all about, okay, we have to stay on task to make sure we see this thing through to the finish line.
Yeah, well, when you start the game as a viewer, it's like, okay, well, it's got this huge margin of what can happen. We can blow them out. We can get blown out. We can be in a close game. When it's 0-0 for that long, and then you finally punch it in, it felt like their last possession was an eternity.
Yeah, especially because that first play, they throw a pass to a play that we had prepped all week for. Again, their best player, number 1. And we had 2 guys there, and he goes up and gets it, and it's like, man, this is just not going to be easy, is it? Like,
no.
After one play, they're already across the 50, and so it's like, okay, well, we're going to have to grind this thing out. And, they marched all the way into the red zone, and, our defense stood tall like it had all game. But, yeah, really up until, the final whistle, that thing was tense.
So this is your second appearance as a head coach. Our third appearance as a head coach. Second time you've won. What is it different leading up to this week that was different for your preparation for the team and how you kind of handled it mentally from being your first time?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the week itself is very chaotic. It's awesome, right? You get you get a lot of the media attention. The Times comes out and does the player cards, which, those are so cool. I remember doing those as a player. You get to travel down on Wednesday to practice in the Dome, which is an awesome experience. You're in there in an empty stadium with just you and your team, right? You're the only ones there. Such a cool experience, but travel, getting down there, coming back, you only get an hour, right? So that's not like enough time for full practice. So, how do you cover other things that you want to get in without kind of wasting a day? So all of that is to say it's very, it's awesome. It's a great experience, but you don't want to get caught up in all that other stuff, right? Because, I've been on the losing end of that as a player, an assistant coach, and as a head coach. And it's like, we were talking offline, to get to this point, right? Such a successful season. But if you ended on a loss, it's just like that is going to eat away at you more than you could ever imagine, right? And so, having been on that as a player and a coach, and, for much of our coaching staff as well in 22, is like that was the priority for us. It's like, okay, well, let's find some time for these kids to enjoy it, but let's also not forget what it feels like to be on the other side of that. So how can we make sure we're on task as much as possible? And so we had to find ways to, make sure we were doing that appropriately.
Yeah, well, it's tough because I remember in 2009 when we were making our run for our state championship in baseball, that week, I felt like my phone never stopped sending texts. And that's so different from every week. And so you start to, I don't know, feel the anxiety of the moment a little bit. Was it any different this time for you, or like, how do you kind of mentally keep that away?
Yeah. I appreciate this about Andrain. Andrain is such a supportive community and a fan base that I think it's awesome hearing from all of these people. The amount of texts and calls and emails I got after we won semi-state on Friday leading up to that game, it really is incredible. Being an alum myself and feeling the love and the support of the community. So that's cool. But yeah, to your point, it's like there's all of these other things going on. So I don't know. I probably have to thank caffeine in some capacity for getting me through that. And credit to the assistant coaches for, the work that we put in. We really grinded over the weekend in prep for this. To put out a game plan that we felt was solid on both sides of the ball. And but yeah, to your point, it is kind of crazy, and that pressure just keeps building and building and building. And I know a lot of the coaching staff, there was a couple nights leading up to that game, it was like, man, you can't sleep, right? You're excited, you're anxious, you're nervous, all good stuff, right? All like good nervous energy. But yeah, all leading up to that one game, right?
Well, speaking of your assistant coaches, your staff has been together for a while, at least as far as I've been around the program a little bit. You've got some core pieces. Pete Monger's my neighbor. One of my favorite things ever is going over to his house on Thursday nights for game study. I love that. Even though I don't know anything about it, he's more than educating me in it. What were some moments of this season, games-wise, where you kind of felt like this team was primed to make this run?
It's a good question. That was a common question asked to me.
Oh, man.
Well, it's difficult to answer that because you just like the playoffs. When you make this run in the playoffs, it's almost like it's a separate season. It's so long. It's a 6-week grind. Anything can happen in football over a 6-week period, So I don't know that there was a definitive moment in the season where I was confident about it. I do know that last year's loss in semi-state was a big motivating factor for our team. That was, it's not like this was like a constant battle cry in the off season, but it was certainly something that, on those days where it's like Friday in the spring, the weather's turning nice. It's like, okay, well, we got weights scheduled till 5:00. So you can keep in mind the fact that like it's nice out and I can go outside, or you can remember that 20-13 loss against Adams Central on our home field in semi-state. So what are you going to do today to overcome that 7-point gap, right? So I think throughout the offseason, it became very clear that like, okay, this group is pretty motivated. They're working really hard. And, especially when the younger guys, started coming together and bonding with the older guys, we're like, okay, we might have something here. But it's just the offseason, right? You don't know how the summer's going to play out. You don't know how the fall is going to play out. I think this is where a lot of credit goes to the assistant coaches and the coaching staff for never being satisfied, right? It was always like, okay, we had a successful season. We won conference outright. All of that is great. But this isn't in a negative way, but it's like, okay, there's still things we need to work on, right? So there's certain offensive packages and personnel groupings that we were saving just for the playoffs, right? And it's like, okay, let's keep working on these things, right? The constant, rotation of players and analyzing who's in the best position on the defensive side. And all of these things ended up mattering, but I think there was just a constant commitment to getting better and better. And you have to have that in football. Like I said, it's like a second season, really, when you get into the playoffs.
Yeah, right on. That's a full month practically. So I was going to ask you too, you mentioned your younger guys coming together at one point. You've got a pretty good class or group coming back for next year. You move up to 3A with the qualifier. How are we looking for 2026? What's the outlook?
Oh man. So here's what I'll say. Whether or not you have a lot of pieces coming back or not is not really a true indicator of future success. It's obviously nice to have a lot of returning pieces, but I say that because every season is its own journey, right? And one of the most important things is how the team comes together, how the seniors lead, and kind of the tone that they set. Good teams are led and motivated by coaches, but great teams are led and motivated by players.
Love that.
And if the coaches are the kind of continual source of motivation and drive, it's going to be a problem in the long run. Again, especially because football season is such a long grind. And as we sit here now, I don't know how our underclassmen, how they're going to lead this offseason and how they're going to lead in the summer. And that's going to be a big focus for us this offseason is, now turning the page. Our senior leadership group now is graduating, right? They're out of the program from a football perspective. And so we have to start, developing that new leadership front. And I've been doing this long enough to know that matters a lot. And it's not just about talent. It's about bringing it all together to maximize that talent. And that's got to come from within. That's got to come from the players. And so we're going to do, as best we can this offseason to develop that in time for June and July.
Was your senior leadership really solid this year?
It was good. So this was, and I told them this leading into the summer, that I felt that was a weakness of our group. So our 2024 senior leadership group was really good. They were fantastic. That was one of the things I was most proud of last year's team, is how our seniors brought everybody together. And so our current seniors who are juniors on that team, not many of them played a significant role in that. And throughout the off season, I just didn't feel like, I don't know, I felt like there was more to be done on that front. And so, I was very honest with them in our first meeting. I can't remember if it was in March or April, where we started to really focus on themes for the upcoming season. I straight up told them, I said, I feel like you guys have not done a good job of taking on this responsibility. And from that point forward, it's a long process, but from that point forward, looking at where they're at now, man, they made a lot of progress on that front. This was a very close team when it was all said and done. And that is due in large part to the seniors and their development and leadership and the way they brought everybody together. So very proud of them for that. And also considering, where I think they were a few months ago.
That's awesome. Is this team defined by any kind of theme 20 years from now when you're looking back at it as maybe a team that grinded or had made big plays, or like kind of how the Bears right now with Caleb Williams is they're calling him Iceman because he's pulling out games at the end? Is there any kind of theme that you can point to that you're going to always kind of think back on this team fondly on?
That's a great question. I would like to think this group was pretty relentless in their energy and physicality, the way they played the game. I got a lot of comments throughout the year about the physicality of this group. And, obviously that means two things. So like on the actual physical side, right? Strength and power and the way you play the game with technique, that's one thing. But it's also a mindset, right? Like football is a physical sport, right? So you have to be mentally committed to playing the game in a physical manner. That has nothing to do with size or skill or technique, right? It's all about your effort and your intensity. And this is something that we emphasize a lot in our program in general, but I don't know. I feel like this group really embraced it in a way that, I don't know, would maybe harken back to the 2021 group. And so, Yeah, it's difficult for me, I guess, in the immediacy to really answer that question, but that's something that stands out now is just kind of the constant commitment to playing football, kind of with a relentless physicality, which is what we asked them to do, but actually playing it out for a full season. I feel like they're pretty consistent on that front.
Awesome. Well, you do have the rapid fire segment coming on after the break. Are you cool to kind of hang out and do a little bit of that?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it.
All right, so before we get to rapid fire, let's hear a quick word from our sponsor.
Calling all college football and NFL fans, game day just leveled up at the Fan Cave inside the Horseshoe Hammond Casino. Watch 8 games at once with your crew in a private viewing area. Room for 15 fans with space to grow to 50. Craving great wings or a cold one? You and your guests will have access to a full food and bar menu with your own personal Fan Cave server running point. And when the final whistle blows, the casino fun is just steps away. Reserve your spot at the Fan Cave today, only at Caesar Sportsbook, Horseshoe Hammond. Game day, your way.
All right, so Chris, in this segment, I just ask the most random questions I can think of.
Okay.
And then we just kind of roll with it.
Okay. Are these should these be short responses, or what are we looking for here on my end?
It's on you.
Oof.
So you let me know.
All right. Pressure's on.
Looking back at your St. John baseball days.
Oh my God. Okay.
What are some fond memories of that?
Man, so I'm going to go with selfish answer and then an unselfish answer. Selfish answer, when we won that first state championship, I had the game-winning hit in that first state championship when we were like 8 years old?
Yeah, around there.
8 years old, yeah, against Kokomo. I think it was Kokomo Southside was the team. And I ended up seeing some of those guys later in high school, baseball as well. So that was pretty cool. I still remember that. It was not an impressive hit at all. It was like this blooper over the second baseman, but that walk-off hit to win the state championship. So that was pretty cool. And then, I don't know, just that whole – so I moved to this area around that time. So, like, what was cool for me is baseball, and that group in particular, that was, like, the first group to kind of, like, embrace me as, like, coming to this area. And so – that was pretty cool because, we moved from Tennessee and we didn't know anybody in this area. So, St. John baseball, those are great memories. A lot of guys that, still see and talk to today.
Awesome. Well, you guys were so good at that age. My brother, for those at home, my brother was on at least the first half of those teams.
Yeah.
And it was just great watching you guys play. You guys were all so mature at that age. And I feel like when you get to 12, it's a race to puberty anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
But you guys were great. It was fun watching being 5 years older. So I got another one for you. So you were a baseball player and also football player. Had a chance to win state in both of those. What made you kind of lean more towards football as a coach than baseball?
That's a good question. I've kind of always appreciated the complexity of football. There's so many moving parts. I truly believe it's the ultimate team game. I'm a math science guy. I teach biology, physics. I have an engineering course that I'm teaching this semester. So I guess my brain's always kind of worked that way. Not that there's not complexity in baseball, but there's many aspects of baseball where it's kind of it's pitcher versus batter, right? And then when the ball's in play, it might be third baseman to first baseman or whatever, right? So I love baseball. That's not to diminish it in any way, but I guess I've just always been kind of attracted to the complexity, the schemes involved with football. And then there's also kind of like, I'm not a big guy by any means, but like I've always liked the kind of the emotional intensity, the physicality of football, and the way that draws some energy out of you in a way that maybe is a little bit different from baseball. Both, I always felt like those two sports complement each other very well because they're kind of different in the mental approach and then the physical approach as well. So I always found it to be a good balance for me to play both of those sports. But I guess that's what ultimately led me to football.
Awesome. What was your what kind of classes did you have today, and what was your favorite lesson you taught?
So in my engineering course, they're developing a website, a personal website. AP Bio, we went over our Unit 3 exam, which was on metabolism, so not super exciting. Just covered mitosis. We're getting into mitosis, so we talked about interphase, G0, G1, S phase, G2. So got a question at the end of class about cancer cells, so that's always an interesting kind of real-world topic. So didn't quite get into it, but getting into an interesting real-world topic. So I'll go with that one.
Awesome. I remember the one time I was in your class with the Big Shoulders Fund a couple years ago. I really, as a 42-year-old, 41-year-old, had no idea that most plant life breathe carbon.
Oh,
Until that class. That shows you where I'm at. Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of like a core tenet of photosynthesis in plants.
That's why I was in the hallway. That's why my biology teacher in high school yelled at me for talking too much most of the time.
That makes sense. That checks out.
So last one, Bears-Packers this weekend. Big game. Where are you going?
Gotta go Bears, right? They're on a roll right now.
What's your final?
Oh, man. It'll probably be a close game. Let's go 27-24, and let's end it with a walk-off field goal for the Bears.
Second time in 2025 that would have happened. So beautiful. Coach Chris, congratulations on number 4 for you. Number 2 as a head coach. Thanks for coming on. I know you're busy. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I appreciate it.
We'll be in contact, man. Take care.
Thank you. You too.
Later. So thanks for watching this episode of Spotlight, and make sure to check out some of the events going on at the venue at Horseshoe Casino Hammond, including Cedric the Entertainer this Friday, Public Enemy on December 27th, and I Love the 90s featuring Vanilla Ice, Color Me Bad, Naughty by Nature, Rob Bass, Tag Team, and if you can believe it, even more on January 23rd. To find out about all things happening in the region, go to the Times website at nwi.com or on their socials, and please check out our Eat Local 219 app, both on iTunes and Android. New episodes drop every week on Thursday, so be on the lookout. Thanks again for watching, and have a great weekend.